Welcome to Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Cole McNeely. Washington in Focus is powered by the Center Square and a production of America's Talking Network. You can go check out all of our great podcasts at americastalking.com. Today we're going to be covering all the top headlines out of the state of Washington, and joining me are two of the top journalists out of the state of Washington. That's right, fellas. Brett Davis and Spencer Pauley.
So kind.
Spencer, you got a Twitter where people can find you at?
No. I don't want anyone to know anything about me.
All right. Never mind. Way to connect with the audience there, Spencer. Kind of thought you'd at least promote your stuff somewhere.
I don't have Twitter.
So anyway, let's go to the better half here of the journalists in Washington.
The better half. Wow.
All right, let's get into the news, guys. That was a heck of a conversation we just had for all of our audience.
As a Cole turns into Don Rickles on the air.
I apologize. The audience might only hear 2 minutes of that. I'm going to be honest, guys. But, for the folks at home, that went on for about 6. So whatever you're hearing, triple that. Brett, we're going to start with you. Last week and maybe a couple weeks ago, we have been talking about this police pursuit reform bill. Washington Republicans say it's not going anywhere.
What do you think of that headline? Do you like that?
Well, the headline, that wasn't the headline. I rephrased it to, okay. Here, let's read the headline. Washington GOP, police pursuit reform bill going nowhere. Wonderful headline, Brett.
It's a good one.
Did you come up with that?
Well, thank you, sir.
That was, wow.
I did.
What's in it? Tell me more. I'm intrigued,
Okay, well, see, that's the point of the headline, so I guess it worked.
There you go.
So Republicans held a press conference earlier this week where they were basically lamenting the fact that police reform legislation is literally going nowhere. As you know from past podcasts, we're operating under a probable cause threshold right now for police to, pull over people for crimes, which makes it more difficult for police to pull people over who they suspect of committing crimes. And there's a bill in the legislature that would restore the so what I'm trying to think. I can't remember what I'm trying to say here. Not probable cause, the reasonable suspicion threshold. And Democrats in the Senate are blocking it. Monka Dingra, the head of the appropriate committee there, she is just not allowing that to go forward. So Republicans right now are convinced that this bill is not going to pass out of the legislature. Now, the Senate has passed a bill that would study the issue and propose model legislation by October of 2024. But Republicans are saying that this is a problem that we have to deal with right now because as things stand, people are just fleeing the police at a much greater rate. Auto thefts are up. So they say something needs to be done about this now. We don't need to study it to death and, come up with model legislation for next year. We need to do something about this now. But it looks like nothing is happening right now. It looks like it's not going to pass. Things could change, but as the way things stand now, it's not going anywhere.
Okay, well, good to know. That's a pretty straightforward, clear cut story there. So, is there anything else you want to add into that, or is?
I guess what's interesting about the legislation in the House that would restore the probable cause or reasonable suspicion standard. I keep mixing those two up. Is there 20 Democrats that are on board with that? So it's sort of bipartisan legislation, but it still doesn't seem like it's going anywhere because the Senate refuses to move on it for the time being. So this bipartisan bill that would, restore the standard, making police pursuits, easier to engage in. It just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It's not getting any traction, as it were.
Yeah, and you mentioned, we're going to talk about with Spencer later, some stories about crime that is happening and some automobile thefts in particular. So
Senator John Braun brought up some interesting statistics at this this press conference. He said there's been a 150% increase in people fleeing police, and auto thefts are up by 50%. So it's a really big problem that needs to be dealt with.
All right. Well, we will keep an eye on that one. And if it doesn't sound like we need to keep that close of an eye on it, because it doesn't sound like it's going to be moving anywhere soon. But in the off chance that it does, keep up to date with it at the Center Square. Check out Brett's stories.
Maybe I'll be wrong.
Maybe you will be. You're just a reporter, though. That's what the people saying this, right? Brett, you're not saying this. This is right. The advocates for the bill, right? Yeah. So
correct.
I don't know if they have any real, interest in saying that if that weren't the case, perhaps there is some angle there. Oh, if we can get, public support that can move the needle. But at the moment,
or maybe political pressure will maybe force some people to change their minds. We'll have to wait and see.
That should be the name of this. That should be the name of this podcast. Wait and see in Washington. Wait and see. So, speaking of waiting and seeing, there is a new proposed wireless device sales tax. This is interesting. Okay, so yes. Let's start with we'll get more into this story, but a wireless device sales tax. What is that? Let's start with that. I mean, that's not something you run into every day.
Right. So legislation has been introduced to add a 2% every time one of those devices is sold that costs more than $250. That'll be a device capable of accessing the internet. According to legislation, that would include, but is not limited to, smartphones, laptop computers, tablets, wearable devices, smart speakers, gaming consoles.
I'm going to stop real quick. You said 2%. You said 2%. It's $2, correct?
Oh, 2%. $2. Yeah, sorry. My mistake.
I'm going to clarify that on the front end.
My bad. $2. Now, presumably, because this is things that, connect to the internet, it would include other things. I would think, like, I know there are smart refrigerators these days and those home security devices. I'm assuming those would be included as well if they, are wireless and connect to the internet.
Yeah. And, we mentioned your headlines earlier, and in this headline included in this, there's a lot of different things to unpack here. Okay. $2 wireless tax. It's proposed, so it's not going in right now, but it's proposed.
Hasn't even made it to committee yet. So.
And then the idea is it's an effort to end Washington's digital divide. Okay, what are we trying to end here? What are we trying to solve with this proposed tax?
Basically, the state's trying to close the gap between the haves and the have-nots in terms of internet access and download speed. There's a link to a survey in the story of about 48,000 people that finds about 6% of people in the state have no internet service whatsoever, and about 40% have download speeds that are slower than 10 megabits per second. And according to the federal government, 25 megabits per second is the minimum download standard. So they're trying to improve upon those figures, those statistics.
So
the money would go to a fund that would help with that.
All right. So the idea is that the money that would come from this proposal would go toward helping close that divide between the what I'm going to call the haves and have-nots of internet and the state. Sort of
a part of a broader plan that's been in the works for a while.
All right, Spencer, we're going to roll over to you now. A couple of your stories that we're going to talk about today. Two of them focus on crime, and the other one focuses on education. Let's start off with the education one. With Seattle schools, there is a pretty significant budget deficit, and they're talking about doing some consolidation because of that. So let's start with what schools we're talking about, what the deficit is, and go from there.
Sure. So the Seattle Public Schools here is facing a $131 million budget deficit. Now, they cite the reason being, increased staff while enrollment has consistently decreased. So here's some numbers for you. Enrollment throughout all Seattle Public Schools was 53,627 2019, and that's dropped to around 50,180 last school year. So a big drop like that. Meanwhile, staffing went from 5,600 in 2014 to 7,200 last year. So with that being said, you're seeing a huge drop in money, and it's going towards other things. Sorry, let me just rephrase that.
So what I'm hearing is as student enrollments go down, staffing has been going up.
Mm-hmm. And the city school board basically said that this is causing this budget deficit here. And, in the near future here, you're going to see them look to create $36 million in savings. You're going to see cuts to some staff programs, and then another $18 million cut in the following year. This will help them just cut down that $131 million budget deficit. But during a budget session they held, Superintendent Brent Jones said, this is the tipping point here. We need to do something now. And so they're going to start looking at options for the fall. to see what they can do. But consolidating schools seems like it's going to be happening. Now, what schools are they going to pick? We don't know yet. And they're going to be looking into that. But you can look across Lake Washington, where Bellevue schools are having the same situation, where they're considering cutting 3 elementary schools because they have low enrollment, because they're seeing the same thing where low enrollment constantly every year while staff just keeps increasing. So, I think this is something you've been seeing for the past couple of years, and now it's causing, some schools to just be totally shut down, consolidated.
That's a significant thing too, right? Because we consolidate school, and in theory, you're going to consolidate staff as well. And keep an eye on that one. You can read that story at centersquare.com. Check out Spencer Pauley's work there. Spencer, staying with you, we mentioned and teased this a little earlier, but talking about crime happening in Washington, an average, think about two counties, okay? Pierce and King counties, an average of 81 vehicles are stolen per day in Pierce and King counties.
Yeah. It's so far this year, it's been over 1,600 vehicles stolen between the two counties. Now, this report came from the Puget Sound Auto Theft Task Force. This is funded by the Washington State Patrol. And it's kind of crazy to see how bad theft has gotten out here. Auto theft, that is. King County Pierce County don't exactly have numbers from last year. But if you look at the city of Seattle, which is in King County, they're having the highest vehicle theft rate in 15 years. And some reports from that show that Ford was the top make that was stolen. But what you see noticeably is Hyundai and Kia grew in the top 10 pretty rapidly last year. I'll show you this. This comes from the Seattle Police Department. They said they had the number of Hyundai and Kia vehicles stolen combined was 48 in August. But after a TikTok trend, I think, believe it or not, that showed how easy it is to hotwire these Hyundais and Kias basically by just really removing a plastic cap on the key fob and using a USB port, you can turn the car on. And TikTok showed that. So you saw that jump go to 197 in December of last year. And I think it's continuing on based on some of the statistics here in King and Pierce County.
Yeah, that's pretty insane numbers. When you look at the historical context around this, this has been an issue in Washington for a while. Yeah. Beyond a TikTok trend, maybe. I'm looking at some numbers here. Now, this is from 2020. Washington was number 5 in vehicles stolen in 2020, with over 27,000 vehicles stolen.
Last year, they were over 45,000 vehicles stolen in the entire state last year.
So you had a jump from 2020 to 2022 being 27,000 to over 45,000. Mm-hmm. And to put that in context with the states that are on the bottom end, so that no matter what, they're probably certainly still sitting in the top 5 in the country. On the bottom end, you have a lot in that lower kind of fewer than 5,000 in the state as a whole. So when we talk about these numbers, I think the context is important that, oh, wow, 45,000, that sounds like a lot. Well, that is a lot. Yeah. That is a lot. And it's even a lot compared to Washington standards only a few years ago. This is what, Brett and I were touching on earlier. Like, hey, when you see these things, and I understand certainly where people are coming from, and I'm not going to make a judgment on this, but I understand where people are coming from, where you say 81 cars are getting stolen a day.
I will say that I haven't reported on this, but the city of Kent here in Washington, the police department is trying to establish a program where they incentivize people to get anti-theft equipment for the Kias and Hyundai specifically, because that seems like the two makes that are being in the hot limelight right now. For King and Pierce County, and even the Seattle city attorney, Ann Davison, 2 weeks ago is suing Kia and Hyundai for their roles in this spike in auto vehicle thefts. I don't know where that will go. I reached out to both car companies, and they say their newer models have anti-theft devices on it, but we'll just see where this goes. But whether or not it's just those two models, you are seeing a huge increase in auto vehicle thefts, and you can attribute to many things. But it's just
their newer models might have that, but most people don't have newer models.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, that's an important. Yeah. Hey, we're making changes on the manufacturing production side. Great. We have this problem. Everybody's not going to go out and just start buying new cars with anti-theft equipment on it. So what can we do? It's comforting to hear that at least there are ideas being put out there that are a little different to try to figure out how to curb this a little bit. We try to stay pretty neutral in general when we talk about this stuff, but I will come down hard on the line of we should try to limit automobile thefts. I think that's a good thing. I think we can make the declaration that it would be a good thing for society.
Way to take a stand.
Well, I'm a courageous man, Brett. All right. Speaking of King County, Spencer, we're going to stay there. King County seeks state and federal coordination following a rather large seizure of narcotics in 2022. Let's talk about that. Let's start with, because I have the number here, but I'd like you to say it. How much value of narcotics were seized in 2022?
Sheriff's Office seized $17.5 million worth of narcotics last year. If you want to show, it's 30 pounds of fentanyl powder that were seized, 465 pounds of methamphetamines, and 26.5 pounds of heroin.
This is just 16 pounds of cocaine. Let's not leave that out there. That's not insignificant. You got here, over 82 search warrants were served last year and 55 arrests and 30 guns throughout these operations. But, why are they looking to state and federal levels for assistance here, or coordination, as you put it?
Well, they just acknowledged that this is an issue that is going across the country, and that this is coming from the border. These drugs are made cheap in China and in Mexico, and are coming through the southern border here and going all the way to King County up here in the Pacific Northwest. And King County Executive Dow Constantine said, hey, we need to collaborate with, state and federal officials to find a solution to this, because the county is just overwhelmed with this. I've talked about this before, but just like even in the homeless population out here, you're seeing so much overdose deaths that the King County medical examiner is running out of morgue space to carry some of these dead bodies. It's unfortunate. It's very grim, and it's getting worse and worse. That's what I keep reporting on. These statistics are just showing more and more overdoses into 2023 already. So, with just knowing how much money it was seized alone, how much more is being left out there and it's being exposed to the community.
Well, and on top of that, I mean, this is always, I think, a topic that we talk about, that you look at the numbers and you look at the statistics and you look at in this case, the amount, the weight, right? They weren't just going to be sitting in somebody's backroom inventory. No. That was going to be pushed out somewhere. Yeah. And as you mentioned, to who, and unfortunately it often is to the most vulnerable people that get it. And again, then we look at the numbers and we say, X amount of overdoses, or they're people. It's people. It's lives being lost, as you just mentioned. And I think oftentimes when we look at news stories or think about solutions or policies to try to combat stuff like this, it's like, wow, let's take a step back real quick and just think about the sheer amount of damage that is being done to people. Right. The goal is not to just say, hey, we've got these statistics. Can we lower the statistics? But, this isn't a game of numbers. This is a game of people being impacted, lives being lost. It's always disheartening, I think, when you see these things, because you think they're going to target young people. Mm-hmm. They're going to target, again, people like you mentioned,
vulnerable people.
Vulnerable. It's sad. Hopefully the trends won't continue going that direction, but this has been several years here. I mean, this that has been going that way.
Believe me, Cole, I will be the first one to report anything positive that comes from the situation.
Well, and the thing is, I understand the kind of poking fun at the whole, say no to drugs and all this. And I understand that, the kind of the meme factor behind that. Might have sounded 85 years old when I just said that. But at the end of the day, what do you do when people are trying to make individual decisions? And how do we employ? Because, hey, yeah, maybe that's not the best way to get young people to stay away from drugs. Maybe that does sound like your grandmother coming down and, oh, it's just that simple. Yeah, fine. Fair enough. Maybe that's not perfect. Maybe that's not good. Maybe there are lots of problems with that. But then what are we going to do? I mean, because, and part of the, it's like I coach high school baseball, and you see these kids and you see what these kids go through and what the kids are dealing with. And these are kids that are having extracurricular activities in their lives. And there's a lot of kids who aren't involved in extracurricular activities, that don't have things in their lives that give them purpose, that are vulnerable, that are looking for answers, that are looking for solutions. And they turn to things that are damage them in the long run. At what point do we start actually trying to say, hey, any solution to this is welcome at the table? Because, and I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox here. When you look at young people today, so Spencer and I are about the same age. We grew up in a time where we had cell phones and we had social media and we had those things. And you started to see depression rates jump probably around the time we were in high school. You saw significant jumps between that mid 2010s, early 2010s onward. And it has continued to go up and up and up.
Yep.
And it's fine that everybody can just go on with their lives. And, well, if I'm okay, that's great. But young people are hurting right now. And I think it's only going to get worse. And so I'm going to throw that out there. If anybody that's listening, if you have a skill set or you have an ability, and I know it's so easy for people to look at young people and just discount it out of hand and say, oh, young people acting up, blah, 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 blah. This has been the story of history, right? Oh, you're young, then you get older, then you look at young people and say, oh, they're out of their minds. They're not doing anything good, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Fair enough. Always has been. There's a difference, though. The injection of social media technology always at their fingertips is a real thing that is causing problems. And so I would encourage everyone, if you are in your community, go out and make a human connection with people. That's all I'm going to, because young people need it. When they look at why people join extremist groups and they look at why people join these communities online, and you look at why people get into these things, it's often because they feel left out. It's because they don't have a sense of community. So they find something online to chase it. As adults, as grown people that have perspective, that recognize self-destructive traits when we see them, you got to step in and help them.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
The 2020s is not the same as 1980. It's a different world. It's a world where drug dealers are using Snapchat to push these things. It's a different world.
Yeah.
Easily accessible. It's a different world. And so, yeah, they shouldn't be doing drugs. They shouldn't be doing these things. But they're young. They're going to make mistakes. It's going to be a problem because they're being hit every direction with temptation of this stuff. And so I know we went on way longer on that than we probably anticipated. But seriously, if you are in a community and you have a way to connect with people, young people in particular, let people know that they matter, that they have purpose, and that you care. And that will go so much further than you recognize. Be a mentor, be a leader in your community. You want to see a change, be the change. How about that? We'll be cheesy at the end of this thing. Anyway,
there you go.
All right. Didn't mean to get on my soapbox, but something I'm passionate about. You know, when you're around kids and you're trying to help them, you see the stuff they're dealing with, and it's a completely different game. Hey, be a leader. Be a leader. Help them out. Reach out. Spencer, Brett, thanks for partaking in that conversation. I think it's an important one to have. Check out more stories at centersquare.com. Check out our podcast at americanstalking.com. Brett, Spencer, thanks for being with us today. If you're listening, make sure to subscribe. We'll be back next week.